The Kubernetes version 1.32 release marks another significant step forward in the evolution of this powerful platform. With a total of 44 enhancements, this release includes 13 features graduating to stable, 12 moving to beta, and 19 entering alpha. These updates continue to reflect the strong commitment of the Kubernetes community to deliver high-quality, feature-rich releases. The theme for this release is inspired by Penelope from the Odyssey. As Kubernetes celebrates its 10th anniversary, this theme reflects the journey of continuous improvement and innovation over the years. Like Penelope weaving and unweaving her work, each release cycle introduces new features and refines or removes older ones to maintain Kubernetes' excellence. As Kubernetes completes its first decade, version 1.32 stands as a tribute to the global community that has driven its growth. So the journey has involved navigating challenges and making steady progress, continuously shaping the future of our native technologies, and this release represents another significant milestone in the collective effort, paving the way for future advancements. So let's start with the alpha or new additions in this release. Number 1, add resource health status to the pod status for device plugin and DRA, KEP 4680. So let's say your pod is using a GPU to perform heavy computations, or an FPGA for specialized data processing, or a network accelerator to handle high bandwidth traffic. If one of these devices becomes unhealthy due to a hardware failure, a temporary power loss, or driver issues, Kubernetes currently doesn't notify you. What happens instead? Kubernetes restarts the pod in a crash loop without reallocating to a healthy device. You're left guessing with little information about what caused the failure. This makes troubleshooting time-consuming and frustrating, especially for long-running workloads. With this update, Kubernetes now exposes the health status of attached devices directly in the pod's status under a new field called allocated resource status. The different status include healthy, which means the device is functioning normally. Unhealthy indicates that the device has a temporary issue such as overheating or failure, and a status of unknown states that device health cannot be determined, such as when the device plugin unregistered. So this status is reported by the device plugin, which manages the specialized hardware like GPUs or PGAs, or dynamic resource allocation DRA, which dynamically allocates resources like storage or network accelerators, and it gives clear insights into whether a pod crash is caused by a hardware issue. So a limitation to keep in mind though is that this feature doesn't guarantee that device health information will update before the pod crashes. For example, if a device like a GPU suddenly fails, the pod may already crash and enter a crash loop back-off state, or be marked as failed before Kubernetes detects and updates the device's health status. In these cases, the feature works as a post-crash diagnostic tool. It updates the device health in the pod status even after the pod has failed, as long as the kubelet still tracks it. So this feature is opt-in and controlled by the resource health status feature gate. It's currently in alpha, so feedback from the community is critical to improving it. So check out the KEP 4680 for more details. Number 2, Flagz for Kubernetes components. Another super important feature added in this release focuses on facilitating better observability, troubleshooting, and debugging capabilities for Kubernetes components. Kubernetes components like the API server, controller manager, and scheduler are configured using command line flag. If these flags are misconfigured or set unexpectedly, it can cause performance issues or outages. Until now, there hasn't been an easy way to check the active flags of running components. Kubernetes 1.32 introduces a new Flagz endpoint for all core components. This endpoint allows administrators and developers to see the exact command line flags a component is running within real time. For example, accessing the Flagz endpoint via the GET request returns the following. It lists values assigned to flags like default watch cache size, or if enable garbage collector is set to true. So how does this feature help? Well, it lets you quickly inspect runtime flag values to identify any configuration issues. Plus, it ensures that modified flags have been properly applied after a deployment, giving you peace of mind that everything is working as expected. Now, there are a few key things to keep in mind. First, access to this endpoint is restricted to members of the system monitoring group, so security is top of mind. It's also designed to have minimal impact on the performance of your components, so you don't need to worry about any slowdowns. Right now, the data is returned in plain text just to keep things simple. If you want to enable this feature, it's opt-in and controlled through the component Flagz feature gate. It's currently in alpha, so if you're curious, be sure to check out the KEP 4828 for all the details. Number 3, status Z for Kubernetes components. As with the Flagz endpoint, Kubernetes 1.32 introduces another feature aimed at improving observability, troubleshooting, and debugging capabilities, the status Z endpoint. This new addition provides real-time insights into critical details about core Kubernetes components, helping developers and operators understand the current state and performance of these components. The status Z endpoint consolidates essential information about a component's runtime environment, such as its binary version, Go version, uptime, and compatibility details. For example, it allows you to quickly check the exact version of a running component to identify issues related to compatibility or configuration without diving into logs or configuration files. For example, accessing the status Z endpoint GET request returns details like the following. So how does this endpoint help? Well, it boosts observability by giving you key runtime details in a simple standardized format, so developers can use it to verify versions and check compatibility when debugging. For operators, it provides quick access to important information like uptime and component versions, making troubleshooting much smoother. Support engineers will find it super helpful too, so they can easily tell if a customer is running an outdated or problematic version. Now, just like Flagz, access to status Z is restricted to the system monitoring group to keep things secure and ensure only authorized personnel can get to it. So if you want to enable this feature, it's opt-in and controlled by the component status Z feature gate. It's still in alpha right now, and the team is looking into the community for feedback to refine for future releases. And you can check out the KEP 4827 for more details. Number 4, Windows node gracefully shut down. So following the node graceful shutdown feature for Linux nodes, Kubernetes 1.32 now brings graceful shutdown support to Windows nodes, ensuring workloads on Windows follow proper pod termination processes during a node shutdown. So when a Windows node shuts down, pods are often terminated abruptly without following their lifecycle events, such as pre-stop hooks or graceful cleanup. This can disrupt workloads and cause issues like data loss. So this new feature ensures the kubelet on Windows nodes detects shutdown events and initiates a graceful pod shutdown similar to Linux. So what's new here? Kubernetes now allows the kubelet to detect Windows node shutdown events and trigger a graceful termination for pods. This includes things like respecting lifecycle events such as pre-stop hooks and SIG term handlers, giving pods enough time to shut down properly, and handling the shutdown in a cloud provider agnostic way, meaning it'll work the same across different environments. So how does it work? The kubelet on Windows nodes is registered as a Windows service, which helps it detect shutdown events through the service control pre-shutdown signal. So when a node shuts down, kubelet uses the same mechanism as on Linux to terminate pods gracefully. Users can also configure the grace shutdown period for shutdown using kubelet configuration parameters. So there is shutdown grace period, which sets a general grace period for all pods, and shutdown grace period critical pod, which gives critical pods a little extra time to shut down. So you can read the Kubernetes enhancement proposal 4802 for more internals, but we're just giving the high-level understanding in this video. So talking about limitations, there are a couple of limitations to keep in mind. So first, this only works for service-based kubelets, meaning the kubelet has to be registered as a Windows service. Setups like nssm.exe won't work here. And second, there's no support for abrupt shutdowns. So scenarios like power failures or forced VM terminations won't trigger the graceful shutdown. So how do you enable it? So this feature is opt-in and controlled by the Windows graceful node shutdown feature gate, and it's currently in alpha. So for it to work, the kubelet needs to be running as a Windows service. Number 5, retry generate name. So Kubernetes 1.32 graduates the automatic retry for generate name conflicts feature to stable, making it easier for users to handle name conflicts when creating resources with generate name. So if you don't know already, the generate name field in a Kubernetes resource specification is a way to create uniquely named resources. It works by appending a 5-character random suffix to the specified prefix. For example, if you set generate name, my app Kubernetes might create resources like my app X7F9Q or my app I8D2M, etc. This is particularly useful when you need multiple similar resources with unique names. While generate name creates over 14 million possible names per prefix, name conflicts can still occur. Previously, if a conflict happened, the API server returned a HTTP 409 conflict error, requiring the client to detect the error and retry manually. So a step many clients didn't handle well, causing issues in production. So what's new here? The Kube API server now handles retries for generate name conflicts automatically. So if the generated name conflicts with an existing resource, the API server generates a new name and retries creation request. So this approach maintains compatibility with the existing 5-character suffix convention while dramatically reducing the probability of conflicts. With this feature, the API server automatically retries up to 7 times when a name conflict occurs, significantly reducing the chances of conflict-related failures. So how does it work? A resource is created using generate name, and if the generated name conflict, the API server retries with a new name up to 7 times. And if all retries fail, the request returns an error, ensuring transparency in the process, and this retry mechanism achieves the same low conflict probability as extending the suffix length to 11 characters without breaking existing setups. So how do we enable or disable this feature? The feature is controlled by the retry generate name feature gate and depends on the Kube API server. So the feature is enabled by default starting in Kubernetes 1.32, as it has graduated to stable, and you can read more about the internals in the Kubernetes enhancement proposal 4420. Number 6, make Kubernetes aware of the load balancer behavior. We are into the final one for today, and one of the most important updates. Kubernetes 1.32 introduces a new ipMode field for services of type load balancer, giving cloud providers and users better control over how kubeproxy manages external IPs. So when you create a service of type load balancer in Kubernetes, an external IP is assigned to allow external traffic into your cluster. By default, kubeproxy blinds this external IP to each node, and this setup works well in many cases, ensuring fast, direct traffic routing from pods to service. However, this behavior causes problems in certain scenarios. So some cloud providers, like DigitalOcean or Tencent Cloud, rely on traffic passing through the load balancer to enable features like TLS termination or proxy protocol. And if kubeproxy bypasses the load balancer, these features won't work as expected. Some cloud providers, like Caleway and Tencent Cloud, use the load balancer's IP as the source IP for packets. In IPVS mode, kubeproxy's load balancing mode, this causes problems because the IP is fixed to a node, blocking load balancer health check. To solve this, Kubernetes 1.32 introduces the ipMode field, allowing cloud providers and users to configure how kubeproxy handles external IPs for load balancers. So what's new here? The ipMode field has been added under status.loadbalancer.ingress in the service object, and this gives you 2 options for managing external IPs. By default, the ipMode is set to VIP, which keeps the current behavior where kubeproxy binds external IPs directly to the node. And this is great for optimizing traffic paths, making things faster and more direct. The second option is proxy, which disables direct binding and makes sure all traffic flows through the load balancer, unlocking features like TLS termination and health checks. The Cloud Controller Manager sets this field based on the cloud provider's needs. Now, how does it work? So if ipMode is set to VIP, kubeproxy will bind the external IP to the node. So traffic from pods that are meant for the load balancer IP will bypass the load balancer and be routed directly to the service. This is all about performance, but it does skip out on some load balancer specific features. On the other hand, if ipMode is set to proxy, kubeproxy won't bind the external IP to the node. Instead, all traffic will go through the load balancer, which enables advanced features and ensures compatibility with cloud providers' specific setup. So this feature is controlled by the load balancer ipMode feature gate, giving you more flexibility in how you handle traffic in managed Kubernetes environments. Now, just keep in mind, if you choose ipMode proxy, there could be a slight performance impact as all traffic flows through the load balancer, which might add a tiny bit of latency. Well, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and do share this video if you like it with your colleagues and friends. Thanks a lot for now, and see you next time. Bye-bye.